Hi, welcome. This is Ashley Nagy with the RSPA. Welcome to the special edition of the Women to Women Community Reconnect event. We have a special educational event for you today. We're calling it How to Lead Without Leaving Your House, and it's brought to you today by the RSPA W2W Community. Before we get to our program, though, I'd like to share with you a quick overview of the RSPA, or the Retail Solutions Providers Association. RSPA is North America's largest community of VARs, software developers, vendors, and distributors in the retail, restaurant, and grocery verticals. We're a fit for any organization that's serious about growth in those markets. Many companies have been members for decades, and we frequently add startup tech companies because we accelerate their growth and they see the massive ROI RSPA members benefit from. If you're serious about growth in the retail IT channel and you're interested in learning more about RSPA, please email membership@gorspa.org. Now, I'd like to share with you 4 success stories from some of our current RSPA members. So the first being Andrea Roberts, president of Teletech Systems. Andrea shares being part of an international organization has aided our business staying in the know of the latest trends and how to adapt. This knowledge has definitely sustained our longevity. Next up is Melanie Tawil, CEO of SwipeTrack Solutions. It's important for our colleagues that aren't tied in to get the most up-to-date communication as well as network with fellow people in the industry. It can be an isolating industry. Jennifer Tershell, General Manager of NCR Dallas, shares the content is extremely helpful to small business owners to assist in making the tough decisions necessary to run a business, especially in today's environment. And last but not least, Jen Petrilla, COO of J3POS, shares we saved a lot on our healthcare through GMS. They're now our HR department. They do our payroll and will take quite a big chunk off of your plate from an HR perspective. So those are just a few of the stories shared by some of our members of the benefits that they find in the value in being an RSPA member. In addition, we have several other benefits available to you as members that you can see here on the screen. A couple that I'll point out are things like our legal hotline. Anytime you have a legal question, you can call or email and get that expert one-on-one advice. We also offer things like warm introductions. So if there's a new partner that you're looking to meet or a new solution that you're looking to pick up, we're happy to make those warm one-on-one introductions as well. And all of these things are possible, or would not be possible rather, without the generous support of our sponsors. So today I would like to thank our 2 W2W sponsors, Star Micronics and APG Cash Store. And we'll get started shortly, but first I'd like to turn the program over to RSPA CEO John Kirk. John?
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. And I'm just going to take a minute and I want to just share a thought with you guys because I will share this, that when we look at the various communities and committees that we have here at the RSPA, I believe and we believe that this community has the opportunity to have the biggest impact on our association, who we are today and who we will be as we evolve. And we really want to thank you for the time, the commitment, the transparency, the input, the professionalism that we see in this community consistently. And I want to thank MJ for volunteering to moderate today's program. So just know this, it's worth repeating. I think of all the communities we have, and we have many great ones that do some great things, I think this community has the biggest opportunity to leave a lasting impact and influence on what we do and who we are. And we thank you for that. So with that, Ashley, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Now it's time to discuss how to lead without leaving your house. Our moderator for today is Michelle Johnson, the Executive Management Coordinator at RSPA reseller member Pinnacle Hospitality Systems. Michelle, take it away.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm really excited to be here. And thank you everybody for being here too. Looking forward to a really great discussion. Before we get started, I do have a quick disclaimer. This will be an open forum and information sharing discussion. Please note the views and opinions expressed during this roundtable are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Also, we've asked everyone on today's call to avoid sales pitches and to identify themselves when they speak for the benefit of our listeners. For the topics today, we'll get to as many as possible. First, we'll start off with the importance of leadership at all levels of an organization, steps you can take to build trust throughout your organization, team building communication tactics, overcoming common leadership challenges, and how to measure the effectiveness of your company culture. Again, if you'd like to join the conversation, please send your question or comment using the chat functions, and we'll call on you and unmute you, to share your views. So let's kick things off. Let's start with the importance of leadership at all levels of an organization. I'm going to start with Emily Wright of BlueStar. Emily, what are your thoughts?
Hi, how are you? I'm Emily Wright. I'm with BlueStar, as you said. But I think it definitely starts with having clear and strategic goals, as well as purpose that everyone in the company understands. And people by nature, they tend to be purpose-driven and align themselves with leaders who understand those objectives and empower and motivate those teams to completion. And leadership does not just come from titled managers, as some people would think, oh, I'm not a manager, therefore I can't lead. Those managers can't do it alone. It must come from all levels. And so regardless of where you are in your company or your organization, you should be able to exercise your leadership potential and kind of lead beyond that job description. Not just doing your day-to-day job, you can also step up and be a leader within your organization at your level. Because when individuals or teams or departments are able to step up, they can implement new, fresh ideas and changes from within to match the goals and the culture of not only their department, but their company as a whole. And when that happens, I feel like at each level, those teams and individuals start to take ownership over their results, which benefits the whole company. But I'd be interested, just with the changes we've had, most people working in an office to working from home. I know that's not the case for some of you, but what are some ways that you've stepped up as a leader, not necessarily from a title standpoint, but just stepped up, become a leader to implement changes that have benefited your teams or your team members with better direction or clarity in the way in which we're working today? I'd just be interested to hear how some of the people on the call have done that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like you mentioned, working from home certainly changes things. Brianna, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Brianna from Micronics. I definitely agree with everything that Emily was saying. I think that, leadership isn't necessarily title-based, and when your company is all on the same page and you're working towards a common goal and that company culture is strong, it's easy to create leadership opportunities for anyone in the organization. So in my experience, I haven't directly managed people, but I find myself trying to lead the people that I work with. I think it's all about attitude. So especially the transition in working from home, it's something that I've done before and was used to. So for me specifically, kind of transitioning to that, I took on a little bit of a leadership role in helping other people adjust to that, whether it's just making sure that you're constantly communicating or even asking about someone's day outside of work, like you normally would in the office. You're not just going in and strictly talking about work. You have relationships with these people outside of the office. And when you can't see them, it's easy to get off track. So I think there's a lot of qualities and drive that goes into being a leader that isn't just having that title. So yeah, I definitely would love to hear other ways that people have kind of gotten into a leadership role without necessarily being a people management title.
I would agree with that. And I think Emily kind of nailed it. It's, it's taking ownership of your role, your responsibilities in achieving those ultimate shared goals too. Would anyone else care to jump in on this topic?
Hey, MJ, it looks like we do have a question from Christine Leduc. So Christine, I'm going to go ahead and take you off of mute. I see that your hand is raised. Christine, can you hear us?
Yes, it was hit by accident. Sorry, I don't have a question at this time. Thank
well,
you.
We'll say hello anyway.
Hi there.
All right.
So MJ, if you'd like, I can give an example of something that I've experienced with one of my team members.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my youngest tenured team member has a wealth of knowledge in mobile point of sale. And there's probably about a 35 age difference between him and the oldest person on my team. And this younger gentleman has become a leader on my team because he has extraordinary knowledge on a specific, a specific initiative and product group. And so he's kind of become the go-to guy for my team on a specific technology. So, even though you're younger versus an older senior member, because of his knowledge level and his openness and his ability to articulate and share, he's just become a leader on my team in that particular technology, specific solution. So, kind of back to what the gals were saying, it's not age, it's willingness to share. It's, and sharing what you have and your talents, whatever your talents may be. So that's just an example of somebody on my team that's one of the younger guys that has specific knowledge in a specific area and has become a leader on my team.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Definitely brings a new perspective too. And I think being able, like you said, to share those ideas and share that knowledge, through whatever means of communication is great. And it also helps to build trust, I think, with the team. He can show that he knows what he's talking about, and I think that instills a level of trust. And I actually think that's kind of a good segue into the next topic, which is what other steps can you take to build trust throughout your organization, no matter which level you're at? Brenda, would you care to add to that?
Sure. I think trust is one of the most important things that we can have within our organization. I know for me personally, I have to trust the people that I work for and that I work with on a daily basis. And I have a great team and I trust them implicitly. But I think the things that help us build that trust throughout our organization, one is making sure that, we can demonstrate respect for each other. We need to really, how we talk and how we act and how we respond to each other is so important to building that foundation and that relationship. And, it's genuinely showing people that you care about them. And it can be something very small or it can be something very large that we do for someone else, but it might just make their day and it might start to build that trust and help you guys work better together as a team, because in today's world, you can't go it alone. You need someone there alongside you, and you want to trust that you have each other's back. And and I think that goes with being very transparent. You have to be willing to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, and be able to take feedback and listen and really take it at heart what people are saying, and then go make changes and work to solve any solution that you can.
I would agree. Would you say then communication is important to building that trust, like how you speak? And
absolutely, it is. I mean, communication is king, right? And so I think it's outlining, like I said, being very transparent about the goals that you're trying to drive for, the results that you want from your team, or maybe it's just a peer that you're working side by side and you're working on a project together. You're very clear with your expectations, and then you hold each other accountable. And it's okay to give praise, but it's also okay to give some critical feedback, but do it in a professional way, in a caring way. And I think it starts with that strong listening skills, and then being able to articulate your goals and your direction that you're heading in.
Right, I agree. And Ashley, I can't tell if there are any questions. Do we have any questions so far on this, or if anyone from the panel would like to add?
We don't have any questions so far on the list, but just as a reminder to everyone, if you do have a question, feel free to type it in, or you can raise your hand, or just send a quick chat message and we'll take you off of mute.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think I would agree too with the communication being key there for anything, being able to communicate in a respectful manner to ultimately still get to those goals while also still instilling trust. Brianna, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So I definitely agree with all of Brenda's points. I think, trust, again, it's not just a leadership, employee type of relationship, but it's within your team. It goes both ways. You need to, especially with everyone working from home, I think there definitely needs to be the trust built that not only your employees are going to get things done, but your manager or leader, whoever they are, is going to be there to still give you that feedback and the guidance that you need. I think criticism should always be welcome as long as it's constructive. And again, that communication is really key in building that trust in order to, give honest feedback and constructive feedback. So yeah, that's how I feel about, building trust. And it's really important to make sure that if you are in that kind of leadership role, you can trust not only who you're working with, but that they can trust you as well.
Exactly. I would agree. It's a two-way street. And again, I think coming back to communication, that's especially working from home, as you mentioned, I know it made things a little different. And you probably had to start using different avenues to be able to do that. I know we did that here at Pinnacle with implementing different avenues of communicating with each other, and because the person isn't necessarily next to you anymore, so you had to pick up that phone or know where to send that chat or that email to get to the right person to be able to share that information. And again, communication comes into play when you're building a team, when you want to have that inclusivity. Linda, did you want to talk about any team building communication tactics you've used at Epson? I'm not sure if Linda's there.
I'm still on mute, so sorry.
Oh.
Yes, I'm back. So yes, every Friday, every other Friday without fail, bi-monthly, I have a team conference call It is the rep's responsibility if they miss the call to follow up with me about what I covered, right? Because I cover lots of stuff. It can be corporate information, current events, topics, action items, trainings that they need to complete, all this kind of stuff. But it's not all about me, and it's not about me just sharing with them. It is both ways. Depending on the span of the call, which I said about an hour, and sometimes I fill up 15 minutes, sometimes I got a full hour. I always ask people, always call on the team member, especially when I know something good's happening. You know, tell me something good, share something good, either good or newsworthy, something in the industry that you've learned or you've heard, or something good that's happened. Did you close a new deal? Do you have a new partner? You know, yada, 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 all those kind of things. So I always want the team members to participate and always be part of the call. It's not, you know, just me sharing with them. So that has worked very, very well. The other thing that we absolutely make sure that we do, and this is from, you know, executive, you know, for our CEO down, is that we always have video on. Unlike this call, we always have video on, so that you're looking at people face to face. You know, and this is too big, and I'm poking fun. This is too big. There's too many people. But on the smaller calls, or when you're having a call with a customer, we always have video on, because it is more of a personal conversation when you're looking at somebody in the eyes, and vice versa. And it's more, since we cannot all be face to face anymore, you know, person to person anymore, face to face is a good option. Because used to it was just all telephone calls. So now we make sure we use video so we see each other. I also make sure that I mention personal stuff. You know, like their company anniversaries, you know, how long their tenure with the company, that kind of stuff. Or if it's someone's birthday, I mention that, because it fosters communication. It fosters closer relationships between the team. Also, so just a different topic. I manage the team, but I never profess to know all. I never try to act like I know everything, right? For me, the better comes from collaboration. I had a guy that is my senior member, but when he started working for me 5 or 6 years ago, the first time he came to me, he had an issue. And this was kind of like our first real interaction trying to solve a problem, right? So he comes to me, he says, hey, I've got this issue, and explains what it is. And I said, so what do you think we should do? And he goes, what? I'm like, what do you mean what? He goes, thank you for asking me. So it goes back to, it's the collaboration that solves problems. It's the collaboration how you get to the best solution to the issue or whatever you're discussing. When our product management team comes to us and is asking me for direction on different things, maybe it's mobile initiatives or OEM stuff or new product development, I say, you know what? Let me talk to my team and I'll get back to you, because I want to make sure that I want my team to be heard from the field up. And again, I think that the best answers come from the collaborative versus from one. Let's see, what else did I want to share? Also, we have about quarterly, every 2 to 3 months, we have a product management and field sales roundtable discussion. So I get with my team, we come up with the topics to discuss. We send it to PM, to our product management team, and then we get together on a Friday afternoon and we talk about all these topics. So all those things, all those are just tactics within communication, and it fosters great relationships between product management and my team, between me and product management, and all the way up to the executive. We also do mid-year and end-of-year territory reviews. Everybody reviews what's going on in the territory, and that's from our CEO to our executive, vice presidents, to our directors, to all of our team. So all those things keep my team in front of the entire corporation, and it just fosters better relationships. Our CEO knows who all my team members are. So all that has worked. Those types of things have worked very, very, very well for us.
Yeah, and I think you touched on some really good points there too that kind of weave back into the first couple of topics we talked about. So, we said, I think a few people mentioned about how important communication is, but like you said, asking those, personal kind of things, getting to know your team members, that helps to not only establish a stronger relationship, but build trust with your team members and you. It also, I think, goes back to empowering them to really take ownership ownership of their own roles and, grow into, have more of a leadership type presence, whether it's the person that's been working for you for, a year or has been on your team for 6 or 7 years. I think that can only help to foster those. And I would also agree that the having the video on too helps with those types of calls and those types of connections, because it does make it a little more personal when you can see someone face to face, when being in the same actual space isn't really an option. So so I think those are really great. Would anyone on the call like to jump in and share some examples at your organization?
And remember, if you have a question, you can feel free to type that in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can take you off mute. So MJ, it looks like we don't have any questions at the moment.
I want to make sure nobody was talking while on mute too. Okay, but that's good. And and actually that's not a bad lead into another topic here that we have is overcoming some common leadership challenges. I think first, if we want to talk to Kelli, what would you say are some examples that you've used in your organization?
Hi, this is Kelli with POS.com, and I think that Linda's point that she made earlier about leadership more or less identified that leadership is more about standing behind your team rather than being in front of them. And so for us, the challenge has been, and specifically to managing and leading from remote locations, how do we stand behind and push forward both our team as well as our customers, because we're in a place right now where it's become increasingly difficult because our team is spread out and our customers, their demands have changed. I primarily work, for example, with restaurants. As we all know, the needs and demands of those customers have changed. So how our challenge has been, how do we, remain in touch with the changing landscape, and then in a remote way lead our team to be able to have the dexterity to meet those demands. So it's been a big challenge, and I think that a lot of the points that we made about earlier in the conversation about how are we building trust, how are we building communication, that it's easy to talk about in theory, but when it comes to practical application and managing everybody's expectations, it's been rough. So some of the things that we've done have been obviously using multiple platforms. We lean more on Teams and Slack and text and Zoom calls, not just as a team, but potentially with a client, just to create those connections, establish that trust. We've had to be really flexible and responsive in terms of how we are using what tools we have at our disposal and reacting when things aren't working, because this is this kind of all remote environment, or even the all remote moving to partially in the office and then it changing, or in my community, restaurants being open for in dining and then suddenly they're at 25% and suddenly they're curbside only. How do how are we able to kind of connect? Well, firstly, we do a brief, Monday morning or a brief morning meeting every day. And with that, those meetings got pretty hefty when everyone started weighing in. So then we had to be flexible and we had to make a format change to make it more productive, kind of have some breakout meetings so that not everybody was engaged in something that was demanding their time that wasn't, productive for them. from the, being results oriented and staying in touch with what it is we're trying to accomplish, it's important to continue to convey that message to our team. It's all too easy to get, overwhelmed and feel alone when you're trying to be results oriented and getting things done. When before we would be in the office in the morning and we would say, hey, do you have this tool I need, or oh gosh, did we get that wire ordered? We don't have that environment any longer. So now it's been about using those other platforms like I mentioned before, Slack, and just having the groups that we're conveying as much information as we can, and then keeping our eye on the prize.
Right, I agree. We had to do a lot of that as well here at Pinnacle, as far as using those different tools to be able to, as you put it, still be getting those results, maybe just in a little bit different way, or using different tools. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and in your situation, Kelli, were there, was there like a more clear kind of plan, or was it more like trial and error to see, where things needed to be adjusted?
Well, like they say, the best laid plans, right? We definitely, had to pivot like everybody else did, so many months ago when we really didn't know, what it looked like. How does this look? What is, how long is this going to last? And we have had to evolve, as I mentioned, changing, the format of our meetings to make it more productive. It's been a challenge, for me particularly, to maintain kind of that client connection that I had, because I would lean on, those in-person visits, or I would lean on, inviting a client to come and visit us in our office. And those things, were not in my toolbox anymore. So I had to figure out ways. I mean, certainly, using the telephone and having, Zoom calls with my staff is easy, because I can say, hey, this is what we're going to do. But then when I'm dealing with a client or an end user, and I'm still trying to, push our agenda to make things happen on a timetable that makes sense, whether it's an installation or, a sales transaction or proposals, how do you, usually we would present a proposal and say, in person, go over it. And that was part of our process. And we just had to modify how that looked. So it has been, to your question, it has been about course correction as we go through. And as we, establish something that works, then it's important from a leadership standpoint to say to the rest of the team, hey, this is something that I did, I'm finding a level of success with. So, it goes back to, communication, building kind of that community, that we're all together in this. And, frankly, if that's one of the positive things that comes out of this, then we should celebrate that win. Because I do feel like, we are more easily being results oriented with our team, and we are more easily accepting change than we had been before.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think change has just become the constant, and like you said, we've all had to evolve in our own way. Emily, how have you overcome any of these types of challenges in your organization?
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. Just like Kelli was saying, just keeping the lines of communication open, establishing what works for us as far as which platform works, how to set up and when to have those calls. Obviously, things have changed many times over the past more than a few months now. So really just finding our groove, finding what works for us, and allowing them to kind of come back and say if it's working for them or not. Taking in their opinions on what platforms work, which ones are just noise at a certain point, and trying to accommodate everybody's needs and what works for everyone.
Right, exactly. Just kind of changing as it comes, as
Yeah,
needed.
I mean, that's really what I think everybody's going through, and everybody's put that so well. But just finding what works for your team, making those changes, and of course, taking in everybody's thoughts and implementing some of the process changes based on that.
Exactly, and I think we've all gotten pretty good about, changing gears a little bit here and there, but still somehow making it work. And I think that comes not only, to a leadership, but some of those other points that we talked about, like having the trust in your, from your team members and throughout your organization, and really empowering everybody to take charge and be able to accomplish their tasks and continue to deliver results within your own organization. And I think a lot of times too, that comes back to a company's culture, and that's really important to have that trust and to have everyone's wholeheartedly being in, working towards those same goals. And I think importantly too, during this time, it's you got to check in on your team members and see, like, is that culture still there? Like, is everybody still understanding what goals they're working towards? So it's important, I think, to continue to measure if your culture is effective even during these challenging times. And here at Pinnacle, I'll let Michelle talk a little bit more about that. We do have a very strong culture here in our team, which I think has really helped keep us all together, and sane and actually working together during these difficult times. Michelle, how would you say you would rate the effectiveness of our culture here?
Well, I think our culture, actually, our defined culture actually carried us through this year. It really did. It really carried us through. First of all, I want to say, MJ, I feel like a proud mama because you're like doing an amazing job of facilitating this. And the other thing is that I really love the way that all of these different things really weave together to the whole idea of a company culture. I don't think you can overemphasize the importance of that, because that is where the trust comes from. That's where the communication comes from. That's where the transparency, the think team, the collaboration to empower your team and embrace change, which we did far more than we ever thought we had to in embracing change this year, and still need to deliver results. And the one thing that I haven't heard anybody say yet, but I know you guys all feel this way, is the importance of not losing your sense of humor. And that's our last fundamental. We have 27 fundamentals, which is our culture, defined culture, and that's keep things fun. So I think you could agree with this, MJ, that some days were a little harder to keep things fun, but we would do everything we could to try to. And so like on days where it was really at the hardest times of going through this year and everybody working from home, I would send out a daily email, which would really be my message to everybody of my thoughts for the day. And it always had something fun in it, or something to try to help everybody. And later on, I heard that some of them, they'd like wait to see that come out. And it wasn't anything informative about what we were doing, because we just keep doing the same thing every day, but it was helping to keep their spirits up. So I do think that's part of the culture too. The thing, getting back to how to measure company culture effectiveness, is you first have to define it. You can't measure what you don't have defined. So I would emphasize that is to define it, and then everybody knows what it is. And we study a fundamental, we study our culture, a fundamental a week. So the way you start measuring it is that you start seeing your team change in the way they interact with each other, and you also start seeing the effects that it has with your customers. So like even with that leadership on all levels, with our company culture, they have the ability to have, to discuss things with each other, and somebody's, leading that's not even a leader, or call somebody out on something if they're not staying in line with things. We have the employee engagement surveys. We've done that. But I think ultimately it is, and we also, one thing we do, I would say, with measuring the effectiveness is that we take our calls that we do get through our help desk, and we reach out to random customers that have called to just see how they thought we did. And when I see things that are wowing the customer, or just showing, hey, they answered my questions right away, those kinds of things are what help us to measure the culture effectiveness. And it's funny because we've been kind of studying our culture, if you will, for 5-6 years now, and it still continues to evolve. And I think you would agree with that, MJ.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on this too, about how the culture weaves into some of these other topics, like the building of trust and, opening communication and things like that. But I think where I see it most effective, or when I'm like, yes, this is really clicking with this person, is, someone who's not in a leadership role by title, let's say, will refer back and use our fundamentals, when speaking with their team members, or when speaking with any other leaders, and holding everybody accountable. Like, straight speak, you did not deliver results, you did not meet these deadlines, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's when you really see it, when you see the team members who aren't in those official, quote unquote, leadership roles really use it and take charge to hold each other accountable. I think that's where it really shines. And I'd be interested if anyone else on the call, I know I hear it a lot when I'm interviewing people to join our team, but how does your company culture, like what kind of bearing does it have on your team members? What examples can anyone give on their own organization?
So MJ, while we're waiting on that question, we did have a couple of other questions that have come in.
Oh, okay, sure.
So Jennifer, I am from ESS. I'm going to take you off of mute, and let's see if you're able to connect. Hang on. Okay, Jennifer, I believe we've unmuted you now if you would like to ask your question. Looks like you're self-muted, so you might be able to unmute. Oh, she said her audio isn't enabled, but she did type her question. So she shares, MJ, one way that they've tried keeping up with the changing customer trends is talking to the customer directly. So similar to what Michelle had just shared as well. She said that they've also visited some of the customer locations that are close to where their employees live and meet remotely to discuss how they can address the customer's concerns.
That's great. I think that's a great, kind of evolution, of their quote unquote normal processes, I guess. So yeah, I think that's just kind of what we were talking about earlier too, about how we've just had to overcome. Like there's no real choice in the matter. You have to bend, you have to change things up a bit to, continue to getting those results and helping those customers and whatever it is your goals are, just achieving them in different ways.
Yep, definitely getting creative. And then Nancy at Partner Tech. Nancy, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. I know you had your hand raised there for a couple of minutes. Nancy, are you able to? There you go.
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Hi, Nancy.
My input was so far back ago, I don't even remember what we were going to talk about.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I know it was under, one of the past things about leadership challenges, I think. And it was, it was really, if I recall, because I kind of got on another track, I think we have to check ourselves at the door as leaders, where it was a day-to-day process before. You would come to work and you'd be in work mode and things would just keep going. And we have to now step back and not think about ourselves and think about numbers and think about the company. And we also have to make sure that we check those employees that may have never worked from home before. And we need to make sure that we're always saying positive things, even when sometimes we're not feeling positive things. We have to think about it so much more now than we did before, because even though we think it's business as usual, or maybe we're all in this together, it's really not, because some of these employees of ours have never had to do this at home, and you can see the morale slipping, and you don't want that. So even if you find that your numbers are down, even if you find that things are changing, make sure that you're always supporting your team by saying positive things. And if there is any negativity to be had, or anything that needs to be discussed, don't do it in a group environment. Make sure that together you all build each other up in this really trying time, because we're all facing different challenges. Leaders are facing different challenges than before, and employees are certainly facing different challenges as well. And we have to think about that, where we didn't before. Before, everything just came naturally, and now, we have to think differently.
I think that's a great point too, Nancy, that you bring up, is that a lot of people have never worked from home before, and that presents, a whole, list of challenges probably in and of itself. But I like that you're very mindful of remaining positive. How is it that you reach out to your teams? Is it, through calls or chats, or, to check in on them and make sure they're still, smiling?
Oh yeah, so we have teams, so we can actually text to one another. We do use the GIF files every once in a while, not just smiley faces, but we do some funny little things. Bosses included, they'll send us things to make sure that we're always laughing or smiling or saying something funny, which is really important sometimes when your day is not going so well. When the boss actually sends you something funny, it's different than just a friend or coworker sending you something funny, and you realize that they care about you as well, your moral well-being. So we do that. We have, now I've always met with the bosses on one day a week, and we go over things, but now they decide to meet with all of the employees, even if it's a half an hour, and they are very mindful about doing personal things. They talk about the dogs, they talk about the family, they talk about the health, are you staying healthy? And they don't put that emphasis on, tell me what you did this week. We do that, of course. We want to know that you're doing okay, but there's a lot of interaction that wasn't there before. They probably didn't know, who had pets and who had kids. And we do that now. We make sure that we communicate with them on a regular basis, at least once a week, to see how they're doing.
That's awesome. It's funny, we do a lot of the similar things, sending like silly, the gifts and stuff like that back and forth to each other, which sometimes it could just be like the goofiest little, smiley face throwing confetti in the air randomly in the middle of the day that I'll get, even from like Michelle. Sometimes I get things and it just like makes me laugh and smile, and it's like, okay, this, I can do this. I can get through, I can get through today. And like you said about, you didn't know who had dogs or cats or whatever. We noticed that, pretty early on when we all went to all these different, video conferencing platforms and things like that. I know my team very quickly met my dog because he's not quiet. So, that was fun. And I think that brought like a whole new, a level to, a professional relationship with your coworkers and things like that. I think it brought around a more human side, like you really got to know people a lot better, even though we were farther away now. So that's awesome that you guys are doing that. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Were there any other questions in there, Ashley?
No, I think we are all set in the way of questions from the chat room, unless other folks on the call have any.
Hi, this is Kelly. I just wanted to add that the point that you make about that personal interaction and humor are so incredibly important from a leadership perspective. You wouldn't think that it would be at the top of the list, but when you have, an organization and you have this incredible stress that you have to be nimble, that you can't rely upon old processes. And it is stressful. You're trying to get the same work done in different ways. Feeling heard and seen, personally, as well as having that sense of humor, I think is irreplaceable in terms of the motivation to just keep going. So I thought that was really great feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the biggest difference in the world, I think so. Did anybody else want to touch on this topic of culture or any of the other topics from earlier? Because I can see we're getting kind of close to the end here, so I want to make sure we have time to get to everybody.
Yeah, this is Brianna. I kind of just wanted to follow up to Kelly's point, and what a lot of you have said about humor and keeping that personal touch. I think it kind of goes back to building trust in the organization as well. I think, especially when you're in that leadership role, it's going to be hard to get your team to feel comfortable with you and trust you if you seem like a robot at work. You can't, kind of see the lighter side of things, and that goes with your team as well. I think when you do have that personal touch, which is a lot harder to maintain at home when you don't get to see them every day, it helps to build trust in your organization. It helps to develop that confidence to, kind of break out into a leadership role. Overall, I think it's so important to remember that, these are people that you're working with. It's not all work, no play all the time.
Exactly. It's good to keep that perspective, and just laugh a little bit. It definitely helps with things. Did anybody else want to add to anything? Well, cool. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun. I think we had some really great discussions here, and I hope to keep these going. So, Ashley, I will give it back to you.
Thank you, MJ. Great job today, and thank you everyone for the participation. Thank you again to our sponsors, Micronics and APG. Finally, the RSPA is all about accelerating the success of our members. For more information on sessions like this or other ways that we can help you connect with the community, connect with each other, please reach out to us. You can visit our website, gorspa.org, or email us at membership@gorspa.org. Thank you again, and have a great day.